Okay, I want you to just look at me and I want you to guess, just guess what it is that I'm doing. What was that? Well, I'm looking away. I was looking away. And that's what people do when they engage in disembodied language. They're always looking away. They dissociate from the reality. They pretend as if the world is not round. No, they pretend that the world is flat. And yes, they also pretend that there is some sort of a higher power which is going to be taking care of us. Yeah. And there's no such thing. There's no such thing. You're not going to be saved, and you're not going to, I don't know, enter into some sort of a ideal situation just because of your belief. It's just absolutely not true. But you're looking away from the reality. And you should have already listened to me often enough to be able to acknowledge that this so-called looking away, yeah, I'll do it again. Did you get that? I'm looking away, not looking into the camera, not looking at myself, not looking at the reality. Yeah, I'm looking away. But it has nothing to do with looking. Yeah, looking away has nothing to do with looking. That's kind of a weird conundrum. Looking away has to do with not listening. Looking away has to do with the fact that you are not listening to yourself while you speak. And yeah, then you engage in disembodied language, and it just goes on and on and on. And it goes on while you're talking, it goes on while you are, interacting with other people. It goes on while you're listening to other people, while you're reading what other people have written. And while you're reading what other people have written about what other people have said, because you also read what other people have said, right? You're not listening. You're basically busy with the language of others. You're not busy with your own language. It is only when you are busy with your own language by talking out loud with yourself, like what I do right now. I'm talking out loud with myself. It's only when you're talking out loud with yourself that you can actually hear yourself. There's no way of hearing yourself unless you talk out loud with yourself. And since you haven't done that, or you've only done that maybe very, very little, you've not done that often enough. You certainly haven't done it often enough to counteract your disembodied language in which you don't listen to yourself. Yeah. You need to do that if you want to have embodied language. Yeah, if you want to have embodied language in which you listen to yourself, you need to do this often enough until you are able to, to stop your disembodied language. Until you are able to continue with your embodied language. Until you are also able to say what you had wanted to say and have your complete fulfillment about your ability to express yourself about yourself. Yeah, it has nothing to do with anybody else. You express yourself about yourself to yourself. And all of that deals with looking away. Yeah. And you've never even paid attention to it because you're so busy with everything you see. You're so obsessed about visual stimuli because that's what distracts you from listening, from oral stimuli, auditory stimuli. So here I am talking with you with the issue of our time, our dissociative, disembodied language. Because, yeah, we normally, people in psychology, they consider dissociation as a phenomenon that occurs in the case of trauma. When people are experiencing some sort of a overwhelming violence or some overwhelming hurt, and the only possibility an individual has, and this is not a conscious phenomenon, no, it is just a natural phenomenon. We hold still, we freeze up, we dissociate from reality, we basically pretend to not be there. Yeah. And that's exactly the looking away that I'm talking about. That's exactly the reason why you're not listening, because you hear disembodied language all the time. You are involved in disembodied language every day. Everywhere you go, everywhere you look, every station you turn to, you hear disembodied language. You don't hear embodied language anywhere. So all you can do to carry on with life is to just pretend as if this is not happening, as if everything is okay. And you can only do that by making it seem as if, no, you're not really there. You're not really hearing what you're hearing. You're not really feeling what you're feeling. Excuse me, can I pass you? Thank you. Thank you. So you have to understand that to engage in embodied language, your disembodied language has to be fully acknowledged in its complete, in its completeness, in its true nature. Because disembodied language in which you do not listen to yourself is devastating. You disconnect from yourself. You do not feel in touch with yourself while you speak. Your language seems to be something that happens to you involuntarily. You imagine it to happen inside of you. You talk about your mind, which does not exist, and you make it seem as if that is the reality. It is not the reality. The reality is that you are not able to say what you want to say. The reality is that you're not hearing what you would like to hear. That's what the reality is. And the reality is that you have never stopped your disembodied language. You have never completely understood what it is so that you could stop it, because you cannot stop it unless you understand completely what it is. Yeah? So the far-reaching aspects or consequences of your disembodied language, they cannot be denied. They cannot be just rubbed underneath the table like, oh yeah, that's just our conditioning. That's just what people do to survive. No, you don't only do that to survive. You have already survived. You are functioning on a survival level when there is in fact no need at all to survive. And you're engaging in behavior which is very reactionary, which is a response to threat when there is no threat. Yes, this is one of the aspects of conditioning. Sorry, I just need to sniff my nose here for a second. This is one of the aspects of human conditioning, that habituation can cause us to feel unsafe in a safe environment. Yeah? Habituation, which means that we get used to certain stimuli that constantly surround us. Habituation can mean that we perceive a dangerous environment as safe and a safe environment as dangerous. And that is exactly what occurs due to our usual way of talking, in which we do not listen to ourselves. Yeah? So, when you listen to me, you hear someone who listens to himself. And you can feel that I'm not threatening you. And yet, you consider listening to yourself as if it is something threatening. Yet, you consider everything I say about what you need to do to stop your disembodied language, because I talk a lot about that. You consider that threatening because it refers to your habit which you haven't taken care of. I'm not threatening you, but you perceive it as threatening. Because yes, I am in disagreement with you. Yes, I hold you responsible for your own behavior, which creates the chaos and the conflict in this world, which we are all aware of and which we're all trying to look away from with our disembodied language. I don't look away from it. I have embodied language. And I look at the reality because I listen to myself. Yeah? And so there's going to be a process, a twofold process. On the one hand, there is what is called deconditioning. Deconditioning simply means that the old behavior, your disembodied language, it has to be stopped. But it can only be stopped if you have explored it sufficiently to be able to stop it. Yeah? So each time you catch yourself that you're not listening to yourself and you are again going off your rocker, you are again flying off the hook, you are again reacting, you are again angered, frustrated, you're fearful, you are all confused and you're all scattered and you are all you are distracted. Each time that happens, you gotta sort of let yourself know, okay, I wasn't listening to myself. And unless you do that numerous times, as often as it takes, as often as it is needed, as often as it happens, as often as you can, unless you do that, you will not be able to let yourself know with your own embodied language, what is this disembodied language in which you are not listening to yourself? How does it work? Why are you not listening to yourself? There's only one way to find out, and that is by having embodied language. So you are able to stop your disembodied language for a little bit, and then when you have some embodied language, you need to bring your attention to why you have been having all the time disembodied language. Unless you do that, that disembodied language is going to reappear again, it's going to be triggered again, probably sooner than later, and you are going to be stuck in it again because you just don't know what it is. You cannot stop your disembodied language if you do not really know, if you do not really understand, if you do not really accept how all-encompassing that is. Because I've said this before, but I need to say this again. Your disembodied language goes, of course, together with a whole set of behaviors. Behaviors which were created and which were maintained. They co-occurred with your disembodied language. Yeah, so all sorts of behaviors which you were involved with because of the way you were dealing with your language, in which you were not listening to yourself. And these are all self-defeating behaviors. And so these self-defeating behaviors, they have to be stopped. These dissociative behaviors, because self-defeating behaviors are dissociative behaviors. They're all part of this process of dissociation where you cannot be yourself. How can you have self-defeating behaviors if you are truly yourself? How can you have behaviors which work against you if you truly are in contact with yourself? You are not in contact with yourself, and your disembodied language hasn't been fully understood. And so you continue with behaviors, not only with your disembodied language, but with many other behaviors that go together with it. You continue with all sorts of behaviors which are completely false, which are completely wrong, which are problematic, which give you nothing but trouble. And yes, you have to, with your limited amount of embodied language, because you can only stop your disembodied language for a little bit in the beginning. In the beginning, you don't know anything. So, okay, you hear me talk about embodied language and you say, okay, I need to listen to myself. Okay, so you listen to yourself and you suddenly realize like, oh, wow, when I listen to myself, I can say all kinds of things which I couldn't say when I was having disembodied language. That's true. And when I listen to myself, I am able to understand things which I couldn't understand when I was having disembodied language. It's also true. And as you can see here, when I switch from disembodied language to embodied language because I listen to myself, the sun is rising. Yes, the sun is rising. Yeah, it's not just completely there yet, but it's almost there. I'll show you once it is there. But you become aware, yeah? You become aware, and it's coming, yeah? You feel that, wow. So listening to myself while I speak, talking out loud with myself, tuning into my sound, hearing the sound of my well-being continue with my language, I begin to say all kinds of things which I couldn't say when I was having disembodied language. I couldn't say it. I couldn't hear it because I couldn't say it. These are all very logical, coherent phenomena. Yeah, one thing depends on the other. And so, yeah, when you keep talking with yourself, when you keep listening to yourself, and when you keep catching yourself, and when you keep addressing for yourself, like, oh, so I was again not listening because now I know I wasn't listening because I was carried away by my language. Yes. And then another time, you know, oh, I wasn't listening to myself because I wasn't paying attention to the sound of my voice. And another time, you were again trying to impress others and so forth. And you were again trapped in some kind of a struggle. You were trying to be something which you were not. And you were not paying attention to what you were feeling. No. And you cannot pay attention with your disembodied language to what you are feeling. So, you need to have embodied language to be able to correctly talk about your own experience. There's just no way in which you can talk sufficiently and effectively and satisfyingly. Yeah, because that is really what it is about. It is about satisfaction. If you express yourself correctly, you feel satisfied. And that satisfaction involves the results of your own action. Yeah, the outcome of your embodied language is always good. But the outcome of your disembodied language is always bad. And so, how many times do you need to say that before you really believe it? Before you really actually begin to act on it? And I'm not saying you need to believe it. No, there needs to be you could say a process of understanding where your own expression of your embodied language will begin to counteract. Yeah, counteract. So there is deconditioning, where you stop your disembodied language, and then there's counter-conditioning, where you begin to cultivate your own embodied language. And yes, that is only possible as long as your disembodied language has been stopped. And every time you fail to see why it stopped, you feel discouraged to carry on with it. So you give up. And so this looking away, yeah, you don't want to see what's going on, is because of your own failure. It's because of your own lack of awareness. It is because of your own lack of skill. But it is also your lack of self-interest. You're not important enough to pay attention, to truly pay attention to yourself. So all of these things are important. Here you go. Yeah. Then the sun starts shining. Yeah. Then it is a new morning. Then it is a true transformation. Yeah, because you are basing yourself on true, real self-knowledge. And no, this is not some sort of a foo-foo language. This is not some sort of blah blah, esoteric blah blah. No, this is very, very real. And you can hear that in my explanation. You should understand already, if you have listened at all to me, or if you have talked with me, that this is what is needed. And unless you devote yourself to this, unless you begin to pay attention to your language, it's just like this. Let's say you are obese. Many people are obese. They eat too much. And they buy all kinds of foods which are not good for them. They don't enjoy their food. They have bad food habits, whatever. They eat too much, they sit too much, they don't move. Yeah, they don't exercise. They don't live happy lives because food is comfort for them, comfort food. And so they cannot stop their eating habit. Yeah, they keep on eating. And they become more and more obese, and they develop morning. And so they develop diabetes. They develop all kinds of problems because of their obesity, and they have, of course, low esteem or whatever. They feel ashamed of their weight. They feel not good about themselves because they cannot move easily. They're too heavy. So what is going on here? They are experiencing the consequences of their own actions. And yeah, you can whine about it all you want, but you're only going to change your actions if you pay attention to your language. And the reason that we are so incredibly bad at changing our behavior is because yes sir, Trump is my man. If you, I saw somebody with a t-shirt with Trump. He gave me a thumbs up. If we don't pay attention to our language, we can never rationally understand that what we are experiencing is always the consequence of our own action, always, regardless of what it is, good or bad. So, yes, I am riding my bicycle here. I am at this early hour, at the rise of the sun. Yeah, I am doing this. I'm recording myself. I'm speaking with myself. Why? Because I like to. Because I have understood how important this is to me, how enjoyable this is. Good morning. And yeah, that's just something that I do, that I enjoy. And I do not know if I will always continue to do this, but I will do it as long as I like. Yeah. And as long as I feel that this has effects which I enjoy creating. Yeah, so I am creating my own future with this. And my future is good. Yeah, my future is happy. I am certain about my future. There's going to be more of this in my future. And not just only more of this, but also the results of this. Yeah. I am feeling so accomplished that that I have began to listen to myself and become aware how everybody with their disembodied language is looking away. And when I say everybody, I mean people both on the left and on the right. Yeah, I mean it is of course equally true that people on the right, although they are more in favor of embodied language than people on the left, which I believe is a very clear observation, because they're more in favor of individual freedom. The left is trying to just, I don't know, bamboozle us with all the group behavior, which is basically in denial of individual freedom. They basically want to abandon the whole notion of individual freedom. That's why they're canceling everybody. So there's that. But when it comes to the difference between disembodied language and embodied language, I would say the right is only a little bit less aversive than the right is only a little bit less aversive than the left. And a little bit, and that has to do with the fact that they are more decent, they're more disciplined, they are more rational, and they're more realistic, and they're more, they're also, of course, because of their philosophy, more in favor of individual freedom. So all of these things play a role, and that kind of co-occurs with all these behaviors that, unbeknownst to them, because that is another aspect of this, we have wanted to be free. We have wanted to be live our own lives. We have wanted to move away from the group behavior which was suffocating us. That's the foundation of America. Many people don't probably know this, but when England sent its pilgrims to the United States, they created a colony. And this colony, New England, which, by the way, of course, took over from the Dutch, because the Dutch were already there and they had New Amsterdam. And the wall in Wall Street was actually a wall to protect the Dutch colony from the British. But that's all history. But the Dutch, they were there, and the British, they were there, and the British, the pilgrims, the founding fathers, it was very clear that at some point they didn't want to pay taxes to King George anymore, and they didn't want to remain under British rule. They wanted to be themselves in this new country that they had suffered so much to occupy. That they had risked so much for, because they came over on the ocean, oftentimes in very difficult situations, and then of course they had to somehow eke out a living here in this new country. And yes, they did all sorts of horrible things, that's true, to the native people, absolutely. They changed their culture, they eradicated their culture and all that. That's all part of it. People have invaded other countries. This is what has happened. But okay, all of that is history. All of that's history of the United States. But when it came to the independence of the good morning. When it came to the independence of the United States and to the Declaration of Independence, when it came to the Constitution, these founding fathers, they were surely trying to create a new form of government which was not based on rule by divine right. Yeah, that's how European emperors had ruled for centuries. No, they were going to develop a government in which there's individual freedom. And that's where this whole statement, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness comes from. Yeah. And yeah, then you also have the First Amendment, the freedom of speech. Yeah. And the right to bear arms. All of that goes together with it. Yeah. All the different amendments. And also the constitutional government, the separation of power, the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. All of this is, yeah, real Americanism, and all of this is in favor, in principle, of individual behavior. And if you consider to link this back to what I just said about all all these behaviors, they in principle go together with embodied language. Yeah. If it was communism, yeah, where there's no freedom of speech, where you have to do what the state tells you, or socialism, or Marxism, or fascism, yeah, what you see in the left-wing government is tendencies towards all of that. So then you're dealing with behaviors. You're dealing with behaviors which fit with disembodied language. And so, in my opinion, there is absolutely no way in which anyone can deny this analysis. It is totally tight. It is totally clear. And of course, it's only clear to those people who know the difference between disembodied language and embodied language. But I happen to be that person, so I can talk about it. Nobody else can. Yeah, I mean, a famous historian, you may have heard of this man, this really great guy, Victor David Hansen. Yeah, he doesn't know about this. He doesn't talk about this. He cannot know about this because he has never talked with me. He has never paid attention to the way in which our way of talking, yeah, our way of talking with our parents, with our teachers, with our preachers, with our countrymen, with our colleagues, with our friends and family. Our ordinary way of talking is disembodied language. And we've never even addressed this. Yeah. So in spite of the fact that we have had behaviors to be free, yeah, behaviors to fight off tyranny, behaviors to, I don't know, to be adventurous and to eke out a new existence in a new country and to create rights for individuals. In spite of all of that, we still haven't attended to the language that goes with that. And that is, of course, embodied language. Yeah, it's a big deal. And I am the only person that can clearly talk about it. So, yeah, this is why I enjoy my rides on my bicycle so much. Because, yeah, I just love to talk about it. I just love to, I don't know, connect all the dots and see all the implications, which, as long as I was busy with other people, because I have had my own conditioning to deal with, as long as I was still busy with other people, I wasn't able to fully do that because it still somehow distracted my attention into all sorts of processes of how to deal with other people. No, you know, in embodied language, we are absolutely unconcerned about how we deal with other people. Yeah. Isn't that great? Yeah. And there's no need for it because we are not doing anything. Morning. We are not doing anything that is high. We're not doing anything bad towards each other. Yeah. Because we are in touch with ourselves. And we are indeed doing to others what we do to ourselves. There is no other possibility. Yeah. So you cannot have embodied language with yourself and then not have embodied language with somebody else. That's just not possible. So To the extent that anyone has embodied language with himself or with herself, that person is always able to have embodied language with others. And if that isn't clear to you, if that isn't, I don't know, apparent to you, if you feel different about this, which probably many people do because that's why they give up, it simply means my whole point that I've been emphasizing from the very beginning of today's explanation, that you just don't know what disembodied language is. If you knew what disembodied language is, if you had true understanding of what it is, it would dissolve, it would disappear. Yeah? And then you would actually realize that you have disembodied language with others because you do not understand how it relates, how other people, their disembodied language relates to your disembodied language. It's always related. We're all in it together, so to speak. We're all in the same boat. When it comes to our conditioning history, there's absolutely no denying about the fact that we are all conditioned to have disembodied language. Nobody of us was ever conditioned to have embodied language. It hasn't happened. And so, if you take my words seriously, you will have to acknowledge that it has never happened that anyone has spoken to you in the way that I do. And I'm not saying this in order to try to sound special. No, I'm simply making it clear that what I'm saying is of unique value. Nothing of what was said before by other people was ever expressing as clearly as I do what I've actually just been expressing. The need for, on the one hand, the deconditioning, deconditioning, meaning the need to stop your disembodied language. That's one thing. And then there is the need for reconditioning, counter-conditioning. That is the acquire to acquire embodied language, to acquire the skill to have embodied language. Good morning. Because it involves a skill. It's not going to just happen by itself. The skill to have embodied language involves, of course, your ability to differentiate between the two. And it is also your ability to continue to listen to yourself while you speak. So it is a phenomenon which occurs because you follow through on your own expression, which is carried by the sound of your voice, which you like to hear. Yes. So good morning. You like to hear what you say, and you say what you say with a sound which makes you feel good. And you continue to speak and to understand what you say with the sound which reflects your well-being, your relaxation, your energy, your positive energy, your excitement, your understanding. And have you done that? Have you? You haven't. You couldn't. You could only do it to the extent that you have stopped your disembodied language. And yes, you had to say to yourself, oh, I wasn't having embodied language because I wasn't listening. Oh, I wasn't having embodied language because I wasn't paying attention to my sound. I was getting carried away by what I was saying. I was fixating on my words. And I was treating language as if it was just happening to me. But I am behaving my own language when I listen to myself. So I am misbehaving in disembodied language when I consider my language as if it is something that is done to me by others. Yeah, because that's why we are also reactive. If we consider our language to be ours, that we are having our own language in embodied language, then there is no need for that reactivity. And then we can understand that even though we are perhaps inclined to react, yeah, we are conditioned to react, we are used to reacting, we're used to reactivity. Everybody on TV and on social media, everybody everywhere. That's a constant feeding off of each other, a constant stirring of the pot, yeah. But in embodied language, you're not part of that. You are completely free from that. And that's a big relief. That is a big, a sense of, a sense of freedom, a sense of space, a sense of discovery, a sense of newness. Yeah. So, yeah. So, I believe I've said enough for today. In the sense that, you know, I'm done saying what I wanted to say. I can now talk about something else. But it is such a joy to have embodied language, yeah. And it's such a pain, it's such a drag, such a hassle, such a conflict to have disembodied language. I mean, come on, everybody should be able to see the difference, not to see the difference, but to hear the difference. Yeah, you can hear it. You can hear it in the sound of your voice that you sound dreadful. You can hear in the sound of your voice that you are tired, that you're worn out, that you don't want to hear it anymore, that you are conflicted, that you are frustrated. Do I sound frustrated? No. Yeah. So ask yourself that question. How do I sound? Yeah. And I'm not asking you to pay attention to how I sound. No, I'm asking you to pay attention. How do you sound? But you are, of course, listening now to how I sound, of course. Yeah. So you hear how I sound because I listen to myself. Yeah. And you see also what happens when you listen to yourself. And that seeing, yeah, is more than just what you can see with the eyes. It is what you can understand. It is what you can comprehend. It is what you can perceive. Yeah. So there's a lot to this. Yeah. Okay. Have a good day.